All right, welcome. Hey, Luke is here.
Hey.
But hey, for everyone that's listening or watching, this is the Journey Youth Podcast. Again, we're on kind of a new trail, a new little mini series that's going to go along for 4 weeks. There's going to be 4 weeks of these conversations where we want to kind of open up the conversation just a little bit more in talks about life and faith and all of the in-between and how those two kind of marry each other together. The reason being is because we've been talking all about Alpha and the Youth Alpha film series, where the important points are life and faith and Jesus. So this is our first week of the podcast, coming back to it. And our topic this week, as you've probably already seen in the YouTube video, is it's church.
Let's go.
Yeah, and what church is all about and what are our roles in it, et cetera, et cetera. But hey, I don't want to spoil anything, but I do want to say, hey, this is a conversation. It is a conversation between us and you. So if you want to share your opinions, share your thoughts, there is a comment section below. Please, we insist.
Also, text your leaders about this kind of stuff. You can let them know what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's also very important. So I kind of just have a question to start us off. Is it's for Luke. Is what's your experience of church growing up right now? All of the above.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I'm like a church veteran at Peace Portal.
Yeah,
I've been going here since I was 4 years old. So yeah, for like the most part, I feel like I'm just really known at church. Not in the sense like that I'm like really popular, but I feel like I have like a lot of my really closest friendships are at church.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, it's like I really have a deep love for the church. Yeah, I really love Peace Portal, but I think to the same degree, I also have this like kind of frustration even with the church sometimes. Like, yeah, the church isn't perfect, and that can sometimes be frustrating to work through. But at the same time, it's like the church has still grown me up.
Yeah. Well, like it sounds like just from hearing what you're saying, the church can be a complicated place.
That's a fact.
Yeah, it has a lot of things going on for it. It makes me think of maybe we should do a podcast episode talking about what the church is.
Yo.
Hey, here we are. Real meta conversation. But like the next question then is like hearing about your personal experience. We were talking before kind of like, is there a constant, like a consistent definition of what church is? Is there a truth to it?
Yeah.
Right? For us as members of Journey Youth, like, are there ways that church should look like?
That's a really good question. I think it's easy for us to think about church as like kind of like this whole Sunday thing or just church as a building. But like a quote that I heard that I think is just, it hits home for me, is that church isn't just somewhere you go, but rather church is something you are. So we are the church. People who follow Jesus, who are Christians, are the church. And Jesus has made the church to further his kingdom and to bring more of what Jesus is like to the rest of the world. So.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Like talking about, I think a lot of people listening, a lot of people viewing, and comment down below if you think the same, is we've kind of been raised to look at church as the building.
Totally.
Right? And we hear the things like church is home, church is family, and it's true. But like, what does that look like? Is it family is to be experienced in the building, or is church literally a new family? So I think I'd love to get into this more. We're talking a little bit from the Alpha series, and we're talking about life and faith. And oftentimes Alpha has brought up the idea of church and that it has like a bunch of different images that I'll list off now that we can get into in a bit. But these 5 points is that the image of church is friendship, family, home, the body of Jesus, and love.
Yeah.
All different things, all important things that we all can play a part in. So one verse that I thought of, let's start off with friendship. The church is a place to experience real friendship. So this verse is Hebrews 10 verse 25 is, let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another. So like it kind of makes me think, the church is a place of community. Like it's all about living side by side with people.
Totally, yeah.
Right. And for you guys listening that are from Journey Youth, you would know that we're the same. We're all about faith, fun, and family, right? Or friendship. It could be one translation of that, right? Is living side by side with people. So, when I hear the verse, let us not neglect meeting together.
Yeah.
My question would be like, how do we bring that back to COVID times, right? Where we're not really allowed to meet together. Like, what do you think about that, Luke? How do you bring those together?
Yeah, that's like a tricky question. Like, of course, I want to see like all my homies. I want to see like the gang. Definitely. I want to see all of youth together. I want to see like the whole church, like all of Peace Portal, like back together. But I think the time we're in right now, it does challenge that and it makes it tricky. But I think when we talk about what it looks like to actually meet each other, meeting together right now, even though I love my friends, it doesn't mean that I'm going to give all of them a hug right now. It doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily go maskless with everyone that I encounter. It means that a lot of my friends I actually can't see right now, that I like have to text over like Facebook Messenger, or I have to give them a call or chat with them on Discord. And I think in the same way how I'm sure like a lot of you know, when you meet up with somebody in person, even before COVID times, it's like you can meet up with them and like kind of totally clown the whole time, kind of never really have a deep friendship with that person. You could do that in person. And in the same way, now we can meet people online and engage with our friends online, but it can still be a deep friendship. You can still talk about kind of the real things together.
Yeah, it's true. And I know, like, thinking about all you guys and girls listening from Journey Youth is like, I'm sure you, because I know I have experienced really deep friendships.
Yeah.
And you've experienced very like shallow friendships. And it's not that those friendships are bad, like where we would differentiate acquaintance, right? Someone that we're friends with that we like, but we wouldn't consider them like our best friend. We're not going to divulge into deep, dark secrets with them. But then there's like that deeper layer of friendship. Yeah. Like, do you see that deeper layer of friendship being what the church is all about?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. So yeah, moving on kind of to this idea of family, unless you have some other thing to say about friendship.
No, go for it, man.
Yeah, let's hop into the second image of what the church can look like for us is family. So I'll read off just to introduce is 1 John verse 5-1 is everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has become a child of God. Now I know, again, for all of us, if you've grown up in the church, and even if you've just heard about church and you've never been to like the building or a formal service, you'd probably heard a verse similar to this, or you've probably heard about ideas where, or even songs where we sing like, we are children of God. And it's like a weird topic.
It is weird,
right?
It's very whack.
It's like, no, I like Dave Johnson and Linda Hayes are my parents, but like I'm a child of God. How does that reconcile? And it kind of comes to a point where it's like, what does that actually mean? Like, what does it mean for me to be a child of God? And like thinking about it, the truth is that, if I become a child of God, I inherit things. That being, I get a father, God, like a father in heaven. But it brings us back to the point of family. So we actually have a family on earth. So, like family can kind of mean certain things for different people. We all have like different experiences with family because we're all unique people with unique situations. But I think the truth of it is like the truth to all of that being is when I think of family for myself, at least, is, whenever I enter into my house and my mother is there, even if I were to try to pretend to be someone else, it would be impossible. My mom would like cut through that like warm butter. She would know, Nick, you're acting different. Like you're not acting yourself. And in the same way, it's, hey, with this family, we have deep friendships, but not only are we deep friends, but we're family. We're connected in that way. You can be yourself as a member of the church, and it's not just an invitation, but it's almost an expectation saying, if we're family, we begin to know each other to a level we can say, hey man, you're not acting yourself. Like, what's up? So a question, when we've been talking for a minute about family already. Well, I've been talking about it. I haven't really asked you a question yet. But like when we think family, I think of like a house that I live in with my family, and that feels very local. But when we read in the Bible, anyone who believes in God, that means around the world is in that family. So like, what do you think about that? Like what's the deal with this worldwide family?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid and important question to be asking. It's like, when we talk about church being not somewhere you go, but something you are, like you're saying, that means that like millions of people are included in this. And the way I kind of differentiate kind of the difference between, we'd say like the local church building and kind of the worldwide church, remember that we are all part of the church, is kind of like there's a little c, like a lowercase c church. And that's like the church building, kind of your local church, kind of like your journey, maybe your young adults ministry, your Sunday mornings. But then you've got your uppercase, like your big C church. And that is the worldwide church. So that's like Christians, all over the world. I was going to start listing countries, but then it's like you got to go through all of them.
You can't start a list, man.
And like, I'm just encouraged by that, because right now people talk about the church is like dying. People are saying the church is dying. And in reality, that's kind of not really true. Like, maybe the North American white church is dying or it's changing, but all over the rest of the world, like we're seeing explosions of people who are coming to faith, like in Iraq, in South America, like all over the world. I'm not going to start listing more countries. Don't start a list, man. But I'm just like so encouraged by that, because it's like times when I don't feel like much of a Christian, when I don't know how much I can keep going in the Christian faith, I can recognize that there's people all over the world who, even though they don't necessarily agree with me about every single thing in Christianity, because there's lots of different views in Christianity, like I can still be encouraged by them and know that they're still going. And
well, like going on to that, like you feel encouraged. It's encouraging to know that like there is a string, like a tie between you and others across the world, like people that we've never met. Still there is a similarity, like a bond, like a sense of family, right? And at times, that bond can be tough, right? We don't always love that bond. Like
everyone's got that weird uncle,
or like, siblings. Like I don't have siblings, but like Luke has siblings.
I can confirm it's not easy.
It's like family isn't always this sense of like, I love my family. It's like, but it's messy, and like in the same way, the church, it's messy. Like, were you going to say something?
Oh, can someone just like put the lid on the toothpaste,
Yeah, seriously. Like your church family just needs to put a lid on the toothpaste, man. But it like at times it can be quite hard. My microphone is falling off the table for some reason. Decided just to do that right now. But
are you good there, Doc?
I'm good. Talking about church family. It's been leaning over like this entire time. But
that happens to the best of us.
Happens to the best of us. Any family member can experience a bad mic. But church all over the world. We're tied to one another. Even though we might have nothing in common, there still is that one commonality.
Totally.
And hey, it's not always easy to be a part of a family.
It's true.
Those of you with siblings would know. Comment down below. Hey, I have siblings. It's tough.
How many you got? Some of you got one. Some of you got none. Some of you got like
8.
7.
Yeah. Welcome to the church sometimes. Hey. But the third point, the third image of the church that Alpha has brought up before and that we want to talk about here is home. Church is our home.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like that this is an interesting topic. We've just talked about family.
Yeah.
Like how would you differentiate between like home as our church versus family?
How would you differentiate that? Yeah, I think, yeah, I don't even know exactly where I'd go with it, but I think like something when I think of the church being my home is kind of, yeah, there's just that freedom to be yourself, but also kind of, I wouldn't say like an expectation, but like you can emotionally expect that like you are going to change. Like who I am, my identity as Luke Tweed on this day, I'd hope that it's going to be different than what I look like in a year or in 5 years or something. And like you're saying, like come to church, be you. Like, yeah, you don't have to change when you come to the church. But like at the same time, don't I want to be someone who changes? Like someone who learns and changes their view sometimes. And like,
Well, like when I think of home, you know, I think a lot of us might think about a house, you know, like or even more specific, like our house is our home. But we can think of like the difference sometimes between like, I don't know if you've ever felt this at home or Luke, the difference between living in a home and a house, right? I've felt that before, you know, like living with roommates or even like living with my own family at times, it doesn't really feel like a place that I'm at home in. And I think the thing that defines maybe home here would be like the verse, "Come as you are."
Yeah.
Right? Is home is a place to let our guard down. Yeah. Maybe. We're like I know a lot of us, you know, wear jeans outside, but then when we get home, it's like all of my clothing is coming off and I'm putting on shorts and the baggiest t-shirt I can find, you know, just like comfy clothing. It's like our guard just naturally comes down at home, right? And in the same kind of vein, like you were saying, it's not, you know, change and then you can come to church.
Totally.
You know, it's not like you have to become a different person before you can even enter into this community. It's come as you are, but expect to grow or to be changed, right? Like we're lowering our guard.
Yeah.
Right? We're open to the possibility of, you know, family member, you know, like going back to the talking about brothers and sisters, but like even when you're at home, your brother and sister can walk into your room and, you know, like give you a weird evil eye and then like leave the room but not close the door like a jerk. You know, I've watched Vine, I've watched TikTok, like home is a different place. We even hear the verse, Matthew 18, verse 20. It's, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am with them."
Yeah.
So this image of home kind of changes sometimes. But the reality is, like this verse is saying, is the church is our home. Yeah. Like Luke Tweed, myself, Liam Fleming behind the camera. Like it's home for all of us, but it's also the home of God, right? Yeah. It's God's home.
It's like where God chooses to do a lot of his work. He chooses to do a lot of his work in the church, but especially through the church. Yeah.
And like when we look back to the past, the idea of God's home back then and now is different, right? We've talked about in sermons before, and Alpha covers this, is that back in, you know, like even before Jesus, God was in a specific room of the temple. That's where he resided, but things are different now. Yeah. Like God's home is the earth. God is here. Yeah. You know, he's working, you know, outside of the building, but still the home is the church.
And if we consider God's home being the church and remembering what the church is, that church isn't just somewhere you go, but something you are. It's like, that makes so much more sense, because I'm not always going to be at the Peace Portal building facility. Yeah. But I would hope to be doing God's work outside of this building.
Could you imagine, man, if you ever wanted to pray, you just have to like sprint down to Peace Portal.
Got a blast.
So a question would be like, for Luke, is like, if church isn't just about meeting in the building, because that's kind of what we talked about. God is all over the place. Church isn't just the building. If it's not about that, why would I bother attending a church in real life? Why would the people at Journey bother attending on a Sunday morning or even a Thursday night, right? Yeah. For some of you, church might look like Journey, and we'd encourage you, join us on Sunday when it's possible, but it looks different. So
Yeah.
why bother rather than just listening to this podcast and then going out for brunch with my friends?
Oof. That's like the question, I think. That's like the question, especially for youth who are like in grade 12 and are about to like embark on a whole new chapter of your lives. Like this is going to be a very relevant question because it's like, why don't I just go for brunch?
Yeah.
I think the biggest the biggest problem for Christians right now isn't so much like chasing like, like drugs and alcohol. Like I don't think that's the biggest problem right now, but like the biggest problem is that we'd be distracted right now.
Yeah.
And to not go to the church or to not be a part of the church on Sundays or in your local church, wherever you are, I think that's selfish. Like,
Why do you think that's selfish?
I think it's selfish because we go to the church not just for us. There's a lot of great things to get out of church. Like, I feel like sometimes when I don't know how long I can be a Christian for. If I have my doubts, if I'm going through the ringer or something,
Yeah.
I can look over at somebody who's been a Christian for longer than I've been alive. I can look at somebody who's walked many years in the Christian faith and see they're still following. Like they're still in it. And I can kind of borrow their faith in a way. So that's what I get out of church.
Or at least like you can be encouraged by like
Yeah.
the way they carry themselves.
Yeah, totally.
Or like we can think of like Doug Klassen.
Yeah.
Many of you might not know who he is, but he's an elder at the church. It's like Luke and I have been through the ringer sometimes. Faith is difficult. And you just look at a guy like Doug Klassen, someone who's believed in God longer than we've been alive.
Yeah.
And he's just chilling. He's just loving life and chilling with God. And it's like, well, if he can do it as long as he has, maybe it's okay for me to struggle where I'm at. So I hate to interrupt you, but
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's like something we get out of church, but we also bring a lot into church. Like we are there not just for us, but for other people. Like we're there too, because as young people, we can be encouragements to older people in the church.
Totally.
We can be taking part in missions that the church is doing. Like there's like the Uganda trip, or there's night shift things that we can take part in and bring forward God's kingdom, more of what God is like to South Surrey, which is huge. Like that's what we're called to do as Christians.
Yeah, so like going to the point of where you're saying like it's potentially selfish to not attend church. Yes, church is about pouring into one another, like being family members, being friends, it's not a one-way track where we shouldn't expect to go to church and just receive and then leave. But like, make friendships, be a part of the family.
Yeah.
But the truth is like there is actually substance to gain from church.
Yeah.
That being family and friendship, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it might be selfish, but it's also like, it might just not be great.
Yeah.
To not go to church for your own sake is
Totally.
like we miss out on deeper friendships at times. And
yeah, like church is even just from like a practical standpoint, church is a great time and place to meet your people once a week and like check in on each other, see how you're actually doing. And like you get to have those conversations. Yeah.
Like I know for all of us, we've had those deeper friendships where someone isn't afraid of actually asking you how you're doing. And, like those conversations can be awkward sometimes, but, quite necessary for us, like for myself as well, like Luke being that person for me is just someone to ask me, how are you actually doing? Right. Like someone that I can be deep down real with.
Yeah.
I don't have to put on a mask. I can see someone as family. So there is benefit. There is something to be gained from it.
Yeah.
So these last 2 points, the second last is body of Jesus. The church is the body of Jesus. And like, what does that get at? It's kind of this idea, right, of we've been made unique.
Yeah.
We're all different people. What makes Luke Luke and Nick are very different things. Yet somehow there's still a place for Luke, and there's still a place for myself, and there's still a place for Liam in the context of this greater church family. But again, I think a lot of us, when we hear the word church, we think about our church building or like the local church or just the Church of Vancouver or Langley or like wherever we're living. But in this context, when we think about like unique roles to play, unique things that we do, like what is the point of that? You mentioned the big C church,
Yeah.
like the church around the world. How are we all unique? Like, how do we serve unique purposes?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's like I couldn't bring I couldn't bring the gospel to Iran right now. Just realistically, I couldn't do that. But I know that there are my Christian brothers and sisters who are in Iran who are bringing the gospel there. Or like I think about historically what the church has done. It's like when the church has actually looked closer into the Bible, they're actually a force for good. Like we see examples of people like William Wilberforce, who were strong Christians in like the United Kingdom government, who abolished slavery and like who were parts of massive changes that actually happen in the world. And like that gets me pumped.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not to say that the church doesn't just kind of run in its own bubble.
Totally.
Like the church isn't just here to try and benefit or like do good for the church, but like if we're the body of Jesus, right? It kind of paints this picture that like we're here to work with what the head sends us.
Yeah.
Jesus is telling us to do something, and that brings us to our final point of love. All right, Jesus, I would argue the biggest theme in the Bible is love. And like as we're kind of closing this down, is we're here to represent Jesus in a physical capability or capacity, right? Like I know that I haven't met Jesus physically, like I haven't shaken his hand or given him a hug yet. So what we've been given is a space to be representatives of him.
Yeah.
And follow through with what he's told us, or with like the mission of love.
Totally.
The biggest theme in the Bible is love.
And yeah, Jesus says like the way that people will recognize you, or the way they should recognize you, is by how you love each other. And yeah, that's totally on the theme of like the church needs to be a force of love.
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched on that in terms of like abolishing slavery. Like that is a way that the church really tried practically to love people. And I think for us, I'd like to end it here.
Yeah.
But I want to invite you, everyone who's listening or watching, to hop in the chat section. We very briefly touched on this topic of love and the role of the church that we play in loving our community. And how do you see the church playing out in loving the people around us today? Yeah. We'd love to hear and have a conversation with you about what that looks like. And like Luke said, text your leaders, ask them what they think. But, that concludes our first week of this little sub-series of Journey Youth Podcast. We're talking about church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we do a quick, 20-second prayer?
20-second prayer. Would you mind praying for us, Luke?
Could do that. Father God, we thank you for you are. We thank you for your care and grace for us right now. Father, today we just thank you for the church. God, would you help us to take part in the church even when it's difficult? Would you help the church to be a force for good just all over the world? And God, would you help us to look more like you? So I pray for everyone who's listening and those who aren't listening right now. God, would you just be at work in their lives, reminding them, God, that you love them. In your name, amen.
Amen.